This week's surveillance report covers Signal's largest update in years, I would argue, and I'm quite excited about it. Google is being forced to host rival app stores after its Epic Games loss, a Wi-Fi attack on a DEF CON flight coming home from the conference, growing American support for social media oversight and why I wish it was directed in a different place, and AI agents still running their own cyber attacks. Plus, we of course have the usual data breaches, threats, and our open source updates at the end. This is a 2-week catch-up, so thank you all for your patience. Welcome to the Techlore Surveillance Report, your essential weekly tech news delivering deep analysis on the latest threats to security, privacy, and digital freedom, empowering you to reclaim control and defend your rights. Like I just said, again, this is a 2-week summary. We just had some weird scheduling things last week. So thank you all for your patience and enjoy the rest of the episode. Now, there are 3 unique stories about Signal. 2 are already kind of happening, and the third one's a bit speculative. But if you guys have used Signal Messenger for a long time, or you've followed this podcast for a long time, you know I'm a big fan of Signal. It's something that I think strikes a really good balance between privacy, security, and usability, especially for regular people coming from things like iMessage and WhatsApp. The first one is one of the most annoying limitations of Signal, in my opinion, which is you can only have it on one phone. So there has to be kind of a central hub device for your messenger, and then everything else has to be a linked device. The problem is Signal only allowed you to use like a computer as a linked device. You can have multiple linked devices, but none of them could be a second phone. So you can't have an iPhone and an Android device and both of them use Signal. And this is why we had open source alternatives to Signal that forked Signal, like Molly on Android side of things. And recently we've had Radar on the iOS side of things as well. But Signal has kind of just come forward and said, yeah, we're going to let phones be linked devices now. So now the newer versions of Signal for Android allow you to link another Android device, including Android tablets for the first time. And this also works on iOS. So theoretically, those of you out there who dual wield your phones for whatever reason, whether it's a work phone and a personal phone or whatever, you can now have the same Signal account on 2 mobile devices. I'm pretty excited for this. I think this is huge for a lot of different workflows out there, regardless of what it is. Now, they just rolled out something new just yesterday now, which is automatic key verification, which complements their existing safety number system. This is a very technical blog, and we don't get crazy technical in this podcast. But the really short summary that I have to offer here is that beforehand in Signal, if you actually wanted to continue to verify that the encryption keys between you and another contact are actually still between you and the other contact, so no one, took over their Signal account, installed it on a new device, and is now communicating with you, pretending to be the other person, they had a feature called safety numbers. And this is something I use with all of my main contacts to try to ensure that when I verify who they are, and if anything changes, I'll be notified that it's not them anymore. So the way that Signal's doing this automatically is actually almost like a network of trust. And they go through the far more technical version of how this works and the encryption behind it. And also they have Cloudflare and Trail of Bits, who served as the third-party auditors of this system. And they kind of go through exactly how this works, again, in the blog article. I just pulled up my Signal desktop client. So I don't know if you have to enable this on each Signal client or if it's done globally for your Signal account. But if you go to your settings and you go to your privacy section, you're going to see a new thing called automatic key verification. So if you enable that, you will opt into using that. I don't know if they enable it by default or not, but I just verified it's already available. And then you can also use it per contact. So if you open up a contact you haven't yet verified, and then you click view safety number, you can see automatic verification on the safety number tab, and it'll tell you if you can or can't auto verify. I just pulled up a contact and it says it's unavailable for that contact. This will only work when you're connected to someone via a phone number. And so if you start this with a username or a group in common, I don't think it's going to work just because of that. Again, you don't need to do this feature. Just for people like me who use safety numbers and want another option, I think this is a nice addition that doesn't need to take away from the current experience if you don't want to go through it. And now, guys, the speculative story. Okay, now I know this is going to be controversial because it reads a little finicky. There have been some activities on Signal's GitHub that hint that they are going to allow you to just pay a one-time payment when you're registering for a Signal account to avoid needing to use a phone number period. Now, this is one of the largest complaints with Signal. I think most of it is, at this point, not really that legitimate. You're going to hear a lot of people online saying because it requires a phone number, it's not a private messenger. The reality is we have actual cases that have demonstrated the two things that Signal collects is the last time you logged in and when you created your account. And those are the only two recoverable things that Signal can provide. But a lot of people don't like the phone number requirement, period, and they want a little bit more anonymity. And so now this is a really interesting way to get around that. Now, the reason why I think this is controversial is it comes at first across as, oh, Signal has this thing that people have been asking for years, and instead of just giving it to us, they're going to make us pay for it because they're trying to make money off of us. And guys, I really don't think that's what it is. It's a one-time, probably going to be a very small payment, and it's meant to be just a barrier to entry to prevent spam on the platform. That's actually why Signal's phone number requirement exists in the first place. It's a free messenger you can download from the App Store. And actually, this is quite similar to what Proton does when you think about it. Proton has a free account, but normally they like you to use like an already established email address to verify who you are, which a lot of people take issue with because it doesn't take alias emails, or they just let you start paying for the service as a way to verify that you are actually a legitimate person looking to use the service in a legitimate way. Again, this is still speculative, so take it, with a grain of salt. I don't normally cover speculative stories on this podcast, but given we're already seeing commits about it on GitHub, and given I was already going to talk about Signal, it just seems like I might as well throw this one in because it's something I'm excited for. Now, the only thing I would love to see from this is if they, accepted cryptocurrency or they accepted just more private forms of payments just to offer that kind of option for people, because I know the reason why someone probably wants to avoid a phone number is for privacy and or anonymity reasons, which I don't think Signal is the best for anonymity, but if they're going to start offering this option, it would be cool if they offered an anonymous way to pay that was still efficient for them somehow. So that's the one thing I'd be looking for, but otherwise, I'm pretty excited. It's a good time to be a Signal user. The next story is that after the Epic loss, Google has started hosting rival app stores in the Play Store. So there's a whole plethora of history here, but pretty much the Epic Games people took issue with how Google was running the way their app store, essentially, kind of like what they've seen with Apple as well. There was a weird settlement that Google would certify third-party app stores, but it wouldn't actually host them on Google Play. But Google and Epic withdrew their settlement, and now this is happening now in the sense that Google is actually going to host third-party app stores literally on the Play Store. So you can go open the Google Play Store and download another app store from there. The reason why this is crazy is I can't think of anywhere else this has happened. Even when you jailbreak an iPhone, typically the jailbreak itself comes with Cydia as a separate app store. So imagine you open the Apple App Store to download Cydia. That's kind of what we're seeing here, and I can't say I've ever seen something like this before, at least default on an operating system. Now, the first app store that they are hosting is called Aptoide. Aptoide. I really hope I said that correctly. I'm not a gamer, so apologies in advance. It looks like some gaming app store, which is funny because you would think that Epic would be the first people to take advantage of this, and it's kind of unclear why they haven't. I don't know what Google's play is here because I've been quite worried about the sideloading experience and how Android has really started to move in a direction where they're trying to disincentivize people moving away from Google's side of things, which goes against this kind of open vision of Android and the fact that Android is supposed to be more open than the alternative Apple ecosystem. And so it's so weird to see these polarizing stories where on one hand Google's trying to roll out a side loading flow where you got to wait 24 hours, you got to jump 10 times, you got to prove you're a human, I'm exaggerating, it's not that crazy, but you do have to wait 24 hours, and they have these weird systems in place to try to prevent people from side loading. They say it's in the name of safety. I think that, realistically, they just don't want people using alternative app stores is really what they are going after. And now they host third-party app stores on the Google Play Store natively. What is kind of buried at the bottom of this article here is that participation costs the App Store operator $15,000 up front, $5,000 of which will serve as credit for review costs. Google may charge more if costs climb higher. Oddly, Google's landing page claims it does not review every app in these stores. I would love to see F-Droid end up in the Google Play Store, but is F-Droid going to spend $15,000 and then potentially deal with Google charging more later on just to be listed here? I don't know. But That's kind of maybe the play that Google is going after here. They're making it harder to sideload third-party app stores. They're making it easier to go into their ecosystem, but they're going to charge you $15,000 to do it. So depending on how you read this, again, this is all still speculative. We're still seeing what's going on. But also, they say it's for this review process. But even if Google reviews it, which theoretically is supposed to say, oh, we're saying this app store is safe, Google still buries these third-party app stores in this weird flow in the Play Store. So you can't just search for Aptoid games in the Google Play Store. You actually have to go into apps, categories, third-party app stores, and then you search in that flow. So it's actually a lot harder to find than a typical app from the Play Store. We all know why they're doing these things. It's just annoying to have them be so indirect about it and talk around the problem and probably make up some BS excuses for why they're doing this stuff. I'm overall excited for this. It's somewhat good news, of course, but I am still concerned about kind of the long-term trajectory of the openness of Android. All right, next story is definitely a fun one, and I like how Ars Technica tagged it as Mile High Hackers. So, DEF CON is a hacker conference that happens every year in Las Vegas. Now, on the flight home on a Delta flight, some people who were at the DEF CON conference tried to spoof, or they did spoof, the onboard Wi-Fi. And I don't quite know how, but the staff on board actually picked up on this fake Wi-Fi network, flagged it, and they shut down their network. This is known as an evil twin attack, and the idea is that it's a fake version of the real thing. So people log into this Delta Wi-Fi network that's not actually real, and it's a phishing page, and it just harvests people personal information. There were no arrests, and the FBI agents did not meet the flights at the gate, but they did flag this as a thing, and so I don't know what the long-term consequences of this are, but I thought it was just a pretty entertaining story I wanted to share with you all. And yeah, just be aware, there's such a thing as white hacking, pen testing, and the lines can get very blurred when you do something like this. And it's probably not the best case scenario to do this on a plane of all places. All right, guys, I have a bit of commentary I'm going to share on a poll of people who are in support of social media bans. And I also have some updates on the AI agents who are running their own cyber attacks and some commentary I have on that. But before then, I wanted to shout out our sponsor, EASYOPTOUTS. Now, there are so many data brokers out there, as well as people searching websites that are just harvesting your information and just giving it to whoever wants access to it. This means who you are, your phone number, your email, where you live, information about your friends and family. And some of these platforms even have information about your income and stuff like this. It's crazy. And while you can manually opt out of all of these services individually, and there are great resources for doing that, I think it's quite tedious and it's not really the best solution for many people. And it's not something even I personally do because I don't have the time to do it and maintain it because you have to continually opt out. But the sponsor of this podcast, EASYOPTOUTS, changes this entire way of doing things so that it puts you in control. EASYOPTOUTS is an automatic data removal service. You just put in as much information as you want or as little, and they'll go in and actually opt you out of these services. Now, the cool thing is they don't just send your information in mass to every provider. They first make sure that your information is on a people searching website, and if it is, then they go ahead and opt out. The other cool thing about EASYOPTOUTS is it's not from a major company that also double dips in the data broker industry. They're just run by two guys, and they're quite independent, and they do things very cheaply. It's just $20 a year compared to that's typically actually what a lot of more commercial services charge monthly. EASYOPTOUTS is who I personally use. It's on our resources, and they've also been backed by Consumer Reports, and they were just as effective as Optory in that study. So it's genuinely the best service I can recommend if you're looking for an automated tool to take care of this for you right now in 2026. They've been a sponsor for a long time. I'm a huge fan of EASYOPTOUTS, and it's who I use personally. Again, it's $20 a year. EASYOPTOUTS. Check them out down in the description to get started. Thank you guys for sponsoring us. And now back to the show. This next story I'm including, not because there's much to it. Honestly, there's not very much substance. I just had some commentary I wanted to share. So it's just another kind of poll that was reported by Reuters that said 66% of people back laws requiring age verification for users under 16. I should specify this is in the US. 61% say social media companies need firmer oversight, including 71% of Democrats and 62% of Republicans. 85% say social media can be addictive for children. There's a 60-year-old mechanical engineer called James Bossardet, and he said, somebody's got to do it, he said, referring to setting restrictions on social media for kids. Is it the government's job? I don't want it to be. I think maybe it should be. Now, this is kind of why I think this whole social media thing is so dangerous, because we've seen countries try to implement age verification, try to clamp down on how or what people can access on the internet. And we've seen different reasons cited for why we need to do that. We've seen things like terrorism. We've seen things like national security. We've, yes, seen things like protect the children. We've seen things like porn, but none of them were clearly compelling enough reasons to actually get the public to fully get behind this idea of locking down the internet in such a disruptive way. This is the first thing that bipartisanly, globally, people are like, yeah, these big tech social media platforms are a flipping problem. Not a single person disagrees with this. I'm not going to disagree with that. I think if someone thinks these platforms are doing good for the world and they don't have issues, we should sit down and have a real conversation, because I don't know why you think they're in any way good. The only person in the world who thinks it's good is Mr. Mark Zuckerberg. And I think he has very questionable views all around. Really, where I stand on the term regulation that I would just want to be upfront about is I think regulation should apply in a way that gives people more rights or more freedoms. And so on one hand, I think it's good to have some regulation in these big tech companies in the sense that it will actually empower you as an individual to use these platforms in a safer way. And at the same time, I think there should be less regulation on things that you can do online. I think what's quite interesting and what I want to challenge people on is that regulation doesn't need to be a position in itself. I think if you just see regulation by itself as something you're either in support of or not in support of, it's the wrong way to look at it. I think food should be regulated. I like feeling safe when I buy food at the grocery store. Maybe not from Taylor Farms, but I like that kind of reassurance. I would also love the reassurance that if I was accessing a website, they aren't allowed to just take my data, do whatever the hell they want with it, share it with whoever they want, and get breached, and I have absolutely no way to actually hold them accountable. I think that is completely wrong, and I think that is the kind of regulation we actually need. So the reason why I don't like this regulation we're pushing right now is that it is penalizing you, it is reducing your rights, it is reducing your access to information, and it is jeopardizing your personal safety. When you have to upload an ID to every platform and every website out there, that is not actually holding the companies accountable who are responsible for this. It's holding you accountable for something you never did wrong. I think that people should have more insight into what kind of data is collected. I think there should be an ability to opt out or default to using something that's not an infinity scrolling, doom scrolling feed. I think that dark patterns need to be actually directly addressed and demonstrated. And I think these things aren't actually impossible to do. So why don't we actually hold the stupid companies accountable who are responsible for this, try to implement different protections on these platforms so that they can't get away with the kind of hidden exploitation they do to hack human biology. And at the same time, let's empower kids, let's empower parents, let's empower adults to give them more tools at their disposal so they can actually execute their rights a little bit better. Thank you all for listening. I know I really went off on the deep end there on that one. All right, and this is just a quick update here because last week we kind of talked about how we have these rogue AI models. This was the highlight story in last week's surveillance report, and these rogue AI models just go off and do their own things and like blah, blah, blah. Meta also hacked the company during a misconfigured cyber test. Oh my God. First it was OpenAI, then it was Claude. And Meta's like, oh my God, yeah, we do it too. We also hack people. Look at us go. And there's a few updates. Honestly, I'm not even going to get into them, mainly because, there's the show notes down in the description, but it's just more of the same stuff. If you listen to the highlight story last week, it's more of, hey, we have these powerful models and we weren't really, we didn't have proper safeguards in place. They started attacking things. They started hacking things. And now we just found out about it. And here's what happened, right? I just wanted to add a little bit more commentary on this from last week. What I wanted to say is I actually got this extra commentary when I was writing the newsletter version of this, because the way I do things back here is I record this podcast, and then once I record it, then I produce it, I edit it, and then the very last thing I do before it goes live is I write the accompanying little blog that goes along with it. What it was is that, guys, this is the same side of the same coin we've seen for the last 10 plus years. I actually referenced how Facebook was storing plain text passwords for years. And this was like discovered in, I think, 2019, if I remember the date correctly. And pretty much it was just pure negligence on Facebook's part. And we see this over and over. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of negligence from these big tech companies, because they're never actually held accountable. Nothing really happens when they do things in a sloppy way. The victims are always the people who use the platforms, which is you guys, your data, your loved ones. And I think that's pretty messed up. But this is just the same thing with AI models. It's nothing different. So I really am trying to break away from this idea that this is somehow something brand new, something novel that's never been seen before. Yes, we have these more powerful tools. Yes, those tools can act autonomously, but this isn't a new concept, guys. This is the same big tech nonsense that they have continued to do, where they have access to powerful things. Beforehand, it was just your data. Beforehand, it was just this. It was just a plain text password. Now it is autonomous AI tools, but because we never actually did anything about holding these companies accountable, forcing them to behave, not letting them just move fast and break things willy-nilly, now they're going to do it with AI models. So it should be no surprise that this is happening, unfortunately, right? So when we inevitably start seeing more of these stories, I want you to stop and ask, is this because of an AI specific thing, or is this because of a big tech company that is being negligent? And I guarantee you almost 100% of the future stories from here is going to be the latter. And I think a good analogy for this is, imagine you have an aggressive dog. It functions autonomously, and you're supposed to have overall control of your pet, right? Like if you go to a dog park with an aggressive dog and you let it off leash and it attacks another dog and injures it, it is ultimately your fault, because the dog, while it is sentient, it's a dog and it doesn't understand what it's doing. I don't actually see how this is different in any way. If you are Meta, if you're Claude, if you're OpenAI, and you have this autonomous thing that you're just letting it do whatever it wants to do, that's still their fault, guys. These models aren't just acting on behalf of themselves. Someone had to run it. Someone prompted it. I just wanted to add my commentary to that, because I think it's silly for people to try to like shift blame onto the AI models when it's really these companies who are messing up. All right, guys, now we are going to get into the defense bulletin, and this is split into 3 subsections. The first one is the data breaches of the last couple weeks, I suppose, then the threats, and then the open source updates. To start with the data breaches, there was a data breach at the shipping giant Seva Logistics, which is a European shipping company, and this caught Steam gamers specifically on the hardware side of things in the last 90 days. I actually just made a video yesterday about this that deep dives into the breach itself, why it was actually more unique than other breaches, because Steam itself wasn't breached, but your information still was. And I also kind of tied that to the Framework data breach, which was the kind of same story. It was Framework itself didn't have a data breach, but they used something called Metabase, and Metabase had a breach which leaked literally all their customers' information globally. And so that's the other data breach. They're all tied together. If you want the full recap, I recommend checking out my video I made on that yesterday. LexisNexis is one of the largest data, whatever they want to call themselves. I'm going to call them a surveillance data broker, but they shut down services after suspicious activity on their servers. And so there's very little information about this right now, but it's actually tied to the Metabase thing that I just talked about with Framework. So it's really important to think about this, guys. When you have relationships with a specific company, they probably use other companies that also have access to your data. And so I always like to limit the number of accounts I have, because normally there's like this massive tree of accounts. Like if you chop off, let's say, LexisNexis is a bad example because you probably never made a LexisNexis account, but they still have your data because that's how they roll. But let's just say theoretically you opened a LexisNexis account. If you chop off LexisNexis from your tree, there's like so many smaller branches that will also be cut off as a result of that too. So that's why I'm a big proponent of digital minimalism, trying to restrict as much as you can. And of course, when you sign up for services, guys, make sure to use alias information as much as possible. Alias your phone numbers, alias your emails, freeze your credit. If you have a private mailbox, I also utilize those too. And I think they're great recommendations to have for yourself and your family members. So make sure to check that out if you want to learn more. Levi Strauss says that hackers stole corporate data in a cyber attack. So this is more on the corporate end of things. But if you want to learn more about that, check it out in the show notes. Now, the Swiss government had a SharePoint breach which compromised 200 accounts. This one was quite interesting. This is a data breach from IVPN, which is an open source VPN provider. I'm a huge fan. They're kind of like top 5 VPN providers I consistently recommend. But they had a vulnerability that was disclosed on their Bitcoin Pay server, which is the open source software that they self-host to accept Bitcoin payments. It was exploited before disclosure, and they were among the merchants hit. Pretty much an attacker extracted their Lightning node credentials and transferred out their operating funds. No customer data was accessed, no customer funds were lost, and no action is required from you. And Lightning payments on IVPN were unavailable from the 7th to the 10th of August, and they are now working again. I think I said Augusts as if it was plural. I meant to just say August, but August 11th, at the time that they published this, everything should be back live. They also reiterate this has nothing to do with the VPN infrastructure, customer data, or customer funds, or accounts or passwords. So this seems like something that really impacted them more than you. And it's good that they patched it. And frankly, it's good that they publish it. I don't even know if it was necessary for them to publish this. So I think it speaks pretty hardcore to their transparency for them to publish this. So good job on the IVPN team. Good response. Next story is just a signal boost for how data breaches sometimes don't just impact data, but also just like real world things in the public. But Susan City is a city in California. I've lived in California most of my life, and I've never heard of Susan City, SUIS. But they had a closure of City Hall and all in-person public services through Friday, August 14th because of an ongoing cybersecurity incident. So emergency services are still up, but they've pretty much had to shut down pretty major parts of how the city functions because of a cyber attack. So guys, always think about this, right? Like, I like people to really take control of their own privacy and security because I want you all to be empowered, to be able to make better decisions online, to have healthier relationships online, because that also makes you a better person. It makes the people around you safer. There's like an infinite list of reasons why you guys should take care of your privacy and security, not just for yourself, but your loved ones and the people around you. But even from a more like systemic level, I think it's important to think about how like this extends also like well upstream of us as individuals, right? Like keeping our cities safe, keeping our country safe, keeping the world safe. All these things are dependent on good cybersecurity hygiene. And it also always ends up to the individual as well. For all we know, the reason why this happened, I'm making this up. We don't know why yet, but the reason this happened is because maybe some government official just didn't have 2FA set up on their account and they were exploited, and now the whole city gets shut down. So I really like people to think about the kind of interconnectedness of safety online, safety in person. They're all very connected. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I think it's something to always consider. Let's go into the next subsection, which is the threats. These are things I want to flag as just kind of ongoing issues that you guys should be aware of. So the first one is that there's new surveillance technology that links your phone to your license plate. This is just an extension of ALPRs, and it's there's nothing too new here. I know a lot of you guys are going to automatically assume that these companies are going to be as invasive as possible. But the idea here is that phone and Bluetooth signals can actually turn those road cameras into far more richer tracking tools. And they're just taking a little bit more of your data and compiling it in new ways. So I just wanted to flag this as a threat. This is nothing too new for any of you who've listened to this podcast for a while, but I still wanted to flag it, especially as something that's shareable for friends and family. Next up, we have God, guys, every time I cover a Nightmare Eclipse story, I think that we're done with Nightmare Eclipse. But Nightmare Eclipse is the story that keeps on giving. Nightmare Eclipse is a disgruntled security researcher who has had beef with Microsoft for literally months now. This one is dubbed Shield Break. And it takes advantage of a flaw in Windows Defender, the anti-malware and security engine built into Windows. This allows an attacker to escalate their permissions from a low-level user to full access to the device and its data. But they have not released a patch yet for it, so I'm sure they will at some point, and Microsoft didn't have any commentary on this to the public either. Next up, kind of going back to the first story I just shared on threats, North Carolina ports confirmed a cyber attack disrupting their operations. So this is another story to point to on like real-world impacts of something that happened. This next story is quite interesting because a couple of people shared this with me and they expressed some concern because passkeys are kind of they're presented as this more secure version of passwords, right? And I think that for most people, that's true. I think where I stand on it is that they aren't necessarily the ceiling, but they raise the floor. I think the ceiling is using a strong, unique password with a strong, unique username with something like a security key as multi-factor authentication. And then you get all the benefits of the passkey as just a second factor instead of it being kind of your all-in-one login. But I think for people who are reusing passwords and doing really silly things with password management, a passkey is actually a really good option. There were some researchers last week who came forward and said that there was novel attack surface that pretty much questioned the entire security model of passkeys. And it's really nice because Ars Technica made this blog that pretty much debunks most of the assumptions. The researchers, again, this isn't a major story, so I'm not going to dive too deep into this one, but the TLDR is that the researchers said that these passkeys can be uploaded online. Nothing about the FIDO standard, which is what these passkeys use, actually require people to store passkeys locally, which is where they're safest. They also did some demonstration where they had full device access, and Ars pretty much cleared up these claims. They said, look, the only platform, period, that ever uploads a passkey anywhere is Microsoft on Windows. Windows is literally the only example they can find of a situation where a passkey is uploaded, which honestly is reckless and frustrating and annoying, and I wish that Microsoft didn't do that. But I think that's more of a Microsoft limitation than a passkey limitation. Ars also says if someone has full access to your system, there's a lot of other things they can do. So they just kind of think that, like, while yes, this is maybe valid research, maybe the takeaways for a regular person aren't there. And if anything, it's just adding a little bit extra fear around passkeys that doesn't need to exist. So that's my takeaway for this story as well. After reading some of this, I personally have been liking passkeys a little bit more. I've been using them more often, but again, not in place of my most secure accounts, which I'm able to use just full on FIDO web authn as a 2FA method instead of the only way in. On the other end, I wanted to end the threat section with some positive news. And, I know many of you probably aren't using Chrome for very good reasons, but Chrome has adopted what may be the best protection yet against account takeovers. And this has to do with cookie stealing, essentially. So the attack here is quite common, especially for people like YouTubers, people with a public presence. They are individually targeted, and maybe they get like a phishing link or something. They get malware installed on their computer, and they pretty much go into Chrome and take the cookies from your account, and then the attacker can load those cookies on their end and access those accounts. Fortunately, Google's kind of designed their own way to achieve this. So this is called device-bound session credentials, or DBSCs, and this stores a unique encryption key using your device's enclave as verification that they actually belong to you. And so on Windows, this is going to use TPM. On macOS and iOS, it's going to use Secure Enclave. And this is going to help verify that the cookies are on your device. And if someone else ever steals those, it's going to flag that it's not coming from the same machine. These are only in Chrome version 147 for Windows and 150 for macOS, and are only turned on for a limited set of users. So it's still kind of early on. And so as we learn more about this, then I can give slightly better advice on how to enable it. Now, what's cool is there was a staff pick comment here on Ars that says, for anyone curious, this is being worked on as a W3C standard, and the work for it has been going on for months. And so ideally, this is going to be something, and I'm showing you this on screen, and I'm going to link it to in the show notes. But this is a genuine standard. It's called Device-Bound Session Credentials, DBSCs. So this is theoretically something that could someday be rolled out in things like Firefox, Brave, etc. And I don't think it needs to be exclusive to the Google Chrome browser. I think this is great, and I'm really excited to see hopefully other browser vendors pick up on it because it's a really important thing to fix. All right, now we're going to get into the final section of the podcast, which is the open source updates. And we have a lot of fun and positive news this week. So Bitwarden, the open source password manager, did an annual third-party audit. They completed it. And so if you want to read, they have all the audits right now in the link in the show notes. This one completely slipped my radar, and so I did want to cover it. But Session, the messenger, was dealing with some funding issues, and they called on the community to help them out. And they now have development updates. They have Pro Beta and Protocol V2 coming pretty soon. So the Protocol V2, for those who don't know, is meant to deal with the number one complaint about their encryption, which is perfect forward secrecy, and it comes with lots of other perks. The call for donations is still in place. Along with grants from nonprofit organizations, community contributions are an important source of funding for Session's ongoing development and maintenance. And so if you like Session and you want to support them, they still need support, but they got enough support to at least still keep things going. My guess is that this Pro Beta is meant to be kind of their long-term strategy to build some revenue. So if you like Session, guys, go and support it. They clearly still need help. This is still a lesser known service, but they're called Stingle Photos. They're an open source photos alternative with encryption. And they pretty much came forward to say, we're back. The reason I found out about this is they actually reached out to me and they said, hey, like, and I heard about them before, but, I didn't hear any updates from them for a long time, but they said that we're back. They've released brand new desktop apps for Windows, Mac, and Linux. They updated their Android and iOS app with major stories. And so if you want to explore other alternatives to maybe something like Google Photos, check them out. And they have some different kind of philosophy from things like Image or Entei. So it's just another provider option. This one I'm really excited about. So Cape, the cellular provider who owns their own mobile core and is genuinely trying to change the privacy on kind of the cellular end of things, released an audit of their disappearing call logs. Trail of Bits is the auditor. You can see the report right here, and they are able to say, hey, the CDRs, the stuff that holds all of your sensitive conversations with the people you love, actually are being wiped in the way that Cape promises to. One thing that Trail of Bits found is that Cape stored daily totals in pseudo-anonymous form. The auditor flagged that an internal adversary with access to the proper databases could associate those totals to individual subscribers by linking the pseudo-anonymous identifier to static identifiers. Cape explored anonymization techniques of daily totals with Trail of Bits, including an HMAC key rotation and secure enclaves, but determined that both are susceptible to an internal adversary with administrator access, which is the same threat model as the pseudo-anonymous approach. As a remediation to this finding, Cape deletes daily totals older than 60 days, and they corrected their feature description to remove reference to anonymous storage. Guys, it doesn't get much better than this. Like having an audit that's public, that isn't just a trust me bro audit that they publish here, with also the issues they flagged, as well as their possible attempts to fix them. And I interviewed one of their team members to ask exactly how this all works behind the scenes. So if you guys want to learn more about Cape, check out our sister podcast, Techlore Talks, or it's just a card on YouTube. But I think the hardest thing about like this concept is that there's no way to verify, right? Like you have to kind of trust Cape when they say we own our mobile core, we wipe this kind of stuff. So this is one more trust signal, which is a massive trust signal. I'm really excited about this. And actually just a few days ago, I permanently moved to Cape. I was doing dual SIM to do a test so I could do a proper review of Cape. What actually really pushed me over the edge is that you can now port numbers in to Cape. And so I've had this like my pseudo number I've used for a long time. And so I decided to just port the my pseudo number into my Cape account. And then Cape has secondary numbers. And so I've been really liking the workflow, but I'm going to wait to do a proper review to share like all of my opinions on it, because there's some things I love and some things I don't like quite as much. And I think a review can really like bring it all together. Okay, Addy.io is an email aliasing service, kind of like Apple Hide My Email, kind of like Simple Login. They are also open source like Simple Login. You can use them with any email provider, including Proton. They're a great service. And they had a lot of updates recently. So they introduced alias labels and filter features for easier organization. And so you can start assigning things like social media to your different aliases so that you have labels on them. They also introduced bulk deletion of failed deliveries, which is available through the WebND app, and users with crypto-based subscriptions can now downgrade directly from the subscriptions page. And that's not it, because they launched Duo and Family plans for Group Pro subscriptions. And so if you are an Addy user, there's a lot of cool, new, exciting stuff there for you. All right, and now we just have two more stories to round out the week, and they are positive news. Well, the first one is kind of neutral, but Google has revealed new Pixels, new Pixel Watch, new Pixel 11. From what I've seen, I watched an MKBHD video right before recording, and it seems like just another minor incremental update with just small improvements across the board. I actually really like this new green color. I will say the green color is really nice, and I like the purple color. So as always, I think Google has pretty interesting colors for the Pixel, and this year is no exception. But really, the reason I'm bringing this up is that this is inevitably probably going to be a phone that you guys can explore for custom ROMs and open source operating systems. And so I just wanted to flag this. If any of you are kind of like considering phones for custom ROMs, there's always typically a delay before we start seeing support on these brand new Pixels. But I just wanted to flag it so you guys knew what was going on in the event that you're like shopping around for phones and you don't know what to pick yet. And the last news of the week. Let's go Linux. Let's go Penguin people. Linux desktop use surged to 22% on one workday. So I just think this is good. It's still questionable how much of this is like people versus AI agents, but I still think getting more Linux usage is always good. So let's keep it going. And if you guys haven't explored Linux distros yet, check them out, especially if you're frustrated with Windows. And that is going to conclude this week's surveillance report. If this analysis helped you reclaim control, as always, you can become, oops, sorry, I hit my mic. You can become a Techlorian by visiting the link in the show notes. You will be able to support us, keep us growing, keep us moving along for hopefully years to come. This is episode 270, so it's pretty crazy to be here for this long. If you do that, you also get access to our exclusive community on Signal. And so if you clicked here because you like Signal or you use Signal, we have a little private Signal group with like 150 people in there. So you can chat with other people who care about digital rights. And I'm also in the group pretty active as well. If you guys don't want to or you can't support financially, totally cool. Just leave a rating if you can on Spotify, on Apple, leave a like on YouTube, share this with friends or family, and also join a newsletter if you want like a 5-minute read version that goes along when this video goes live. And also that newsletter I think is a really good thing to share with friends or family because it's meant to be like 5 minutes, super easy, and it's meant to be something to be like, hey mom, hey dad, just so that you're always in the loop on what's going on. Just join this newsletter and that way you get notified if there's anything that impacts you. That's kind of the idea behind it. That's all I have to share this week. Thank you all so much for listening as always and for just keeping yourself safer online, and I'll see you next week on the next surveillance report. Thank you for watching.